Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas. But who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Peter Dolese, a real joy to have you here in the rehearsal studio at Carpenter Square Theater for This Town OKC.
I know, I can't hardly believe it. The space is amazing. Just surrounded by all these different set pieces. I feel like I'm in about 19 different plays right now.
As a matter of fact, you are. I might even be able to tell you which play, that couch was in and that table.
Well, honestly, it's just, such a rich history. Carpenter Square Theater, my goodness, it's been around for so long.
Yeah.
And actually, my professional life has intertwined with Carpenter Square many, many times over the years because, Carpenter Square used to be housed at the Stage Center Theater.
Right.
And, of course, at that point, I was over at the Arts Council of Oklahoma City, and it was our facility, which was such a, boy, it was hard to work through all the different details of that place,
Yeah.
Something like 60,000 square feet of space that heat and air and, oh my gosh, just everything. It pretty much almost buried every group that ever actually tried to run it, including the original Mummers Theater.
Right.
When they first moved over there, they only lasted about one season, and then they, it ran them out of money so quick. But it was a wonderful facility, which is no more. Now you've got the lovely park where they have, futsal court and a basketball court, and it gets used a lot by the John Rex School, that same piece of property. But we could, of course, do a whole session on just what happened with the Stage Center building. But yeah, that was, and then where was Carpenter Square before that? It was on.
We started in the Carpenter Paper Warehouse Company.
That's right.
On Robert S. Kerr.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we were there for 4 or 5 years, and then went to Maine and Hudson.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 years, and then went to Stage Center until it flooded. Spent one season at the Bricktown Convention Center, which was neither in Bricktown nor really a convention center.
Yeah. And
then landed at Maine and Chartel.
Well, your perseverance. Have you been on the board for how many years have you worked?
Since 2017.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I tell you right now, you've done a great job. This new space, everybody needs to come see this new space. It is really spectacular.
We're pretty proud.
Yeah, you guys are doing a good job over here. Plus, the seats have so much leg room. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, you're a tall guy. You're taller than me.
I'm talking. It's not a place where you have any trouble at all just sitting back and enjoying the show and stretching out your legs. I love it.
That was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're here to talk about you.
Oh my
Peter
gosh.
Dolese. I know you have a long history with Oklahoma City. You're from here, right?
I am from here.
Where did you go to grade school and high school?
Well, I went to grade school and high school at Cassidy, and then I ended up graduating from Northeast, and then I went to did my college degree work at OCU.
Okay.
I was a music theory major and flute performance, and so a major music background.
Flute performance?
Yeah, that's how I got started. I loved Jethro Tull.
Yeah. I got to interview Ian Anderson one time.
How cool is
when
that?
I was in college. He was monosyllabic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was kind of where I got my start. But, in the early days, my history was not as planned as probably a lot of people's are, in that I was involved with a lot of different bands. I started performing when I was pretty young, like 14, 15 years old, and I was playing harmonica, and then I started playing flute. But and I've continued to play the harmonica my whole life.
Right.
And
you played recently with the Philharmonic.
Yes, I did. I was a guest artist with the OKC Phil for their Stars of the Red, White, and Boom show downtown, and also that we did the next night in Yukon, and that was a big deal, man. I'm telling you.
I'll bet.
Not as near a cool of a stage for the performance, but Brazilian people there.
Yeah.
and a really big fireworks show.
Okay, so you played in a lot of bands. I saw you in the Linky Brothers
Right, but
many times.
here's the deal. Well, I wasn't in the Linky Brothers band, but I
Right.
was really good friends with the Linky Brothers. And in the early days, when I was playing in different groups and stuff, Roger Linky and I became really good friends. And then I started helping them book shows. And I would chief cook, bottle wash. I mean, sometimes I'd be the doorman. I'd work out the deal with the club owner. I'd collect the money at the end of the night. And me and Roger I sort of helped the band with a lot of that kind of stuff, which kind of got me into arts administration without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Before I ever got a job in arts administration. But it was in the summer of 75 into 76. Marilyn Myers, who used to be the director of Arts Council Oklahoma City, working with Joy Reid Belt actually was a part of it, and so was John Belt too. But and it was during the Jimmy Carter administration. There was this act called the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act,
Yes.
CETA.
Yeah.
And there was some money from CETA that actually Joy Reid Belt had. We were talking about this the other day. She had a lot to do with trying to garner this little piece of funding. Anyway. The CETA
And she has been on this podcast and told some of that.
Yeah. Well, she figured out a way to get some of the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act money allocated to the arts, which was enough to provide for about 12 different arts-related positions. And then she worked with Arts Council Oklahoma City to administer those funds.
Right.
So in reality, I didn't work for the Arts Council. I worked for, my first job was in 1976. I was a CETA grant employee, and I worked for 2 years as a CETA grant employee. It was my first job in the arts, and I worked for the Oklahoma Museum of Art, and it was out at the fairgrounds at the time in the big donut-shaped building.
Right.
And then they started this thing called Art Space. And Art Space was a downtown extension of the museum. So this was years before the museum moved downtown.
Right.
Lowell Adams was the director of the main space, and then the one downtown, we were all just sort of employees working under Lowell.
Okay.
But the downtown extension, we had art gallery shows there.
Right.
And then we also had a rental gallery where you could rent paintings.
Oh, I
which was
remember
an
that,
extension
yeah.
of Imogene's rental gallery down at the fairgrounds. And then my job was we did noontime performances every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, all year long. And we had a big chunk of CETA of NEA money that went towards that too. But so here, right before there, I was working with the Linkies, and I was booking a lot of acts. And then afterwards, when I started in '76 with the museum, my job was the program coordinator of the art space downtown, where I had to program something every single day.
Right.
So I would have J.R. Witt would come and do poetry readings, and John McGinnis, and Mike Mullen was a big deal back in those days too, and Ray Baldridge. All these everybody was a poet, and all of them had published books too, which was really cool. And it was a scene.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a real scene. And the coffee shops, like the Sword and the Stone and things like that, were pretty much closing down. And the Contemporary Arts Foundation was open. And the Contemporary Arts Foundation, which was at 609 Robert S. Kerr, or eventually it burned down. But that was really they had a place there called the Warehouse Theater. And this was years before Carpenter Square.
Years, yeah.
And
I went to one play there.
Linda McGinnis did some plays there, and Mike Mullen did plays there, and a variety of different people acted in the plays. And anyway, so I had just a cornucopia of local talent that I was able to pay to come and do little 1 hour long slots at noon.
How fantastic.
And 5 times a week for 2 years, I got to know literally everybody. So if you were in a band but you wanted to play just a solo guitar, I would hire you to do a solo guitar. So that means out of one band, I might get 3 different performers that would do, or people would come up with little duets or combos that were different from their nighttime gigs.
Right.
And of course, back in those days, there was a lot more music happening. And I don't want to poo-poo the local scene now, but there were a lot of clubs that you could go and see music in Oklahoma City back in those days, in the 70s and early 80s. It was a scene. So there was a lot of musicians and a lot to choose from. There still are a lot of musicians, but it's a little bit different than it was back then, I think. So that's how I got my start, was the 2 years in the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act. And after that, I went into the restaurant business for about 10 years, and I worked at the Class and Grill and ended up being one of the owners of the Class and Grill. But that was all owned by artists,
right?
Mark Kaplan and Tupper Patnode, and
Linda.
Linda was married to Tupper in those days.
Yeah.
So Linda McGinnis was one of the owners, and Mary Ann Robinson, and
I didn't know there were that many owners.
Yeah. Well, there was about 6 of us that were all pieces, and I got bought out when I left. And when I left there, I went to work for Arts Council Oklahoma City, which was in 1980.
Go back to the Class and Grill for just a moment, because for a
it's
while,
reopened now.
Yeah, but for a while that was
the place,
the center.
Yeah.
I could go there on Sunday for brunch and just stay and meet everybody I knew.
Everybody went there.
Everybody. And I remember you seating my first wife and I. We would go there every week, and
for about half of those 10 years, I worked the floor. The other half of the 10 years, I was cooking bottle washer. I do the breakfast. I cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, we had 3 or 4 of us that did all the cooking. But I learned so much, because the people that own that place used to own Chez Amis, which was on 30th and Classen next door to Starwind, which was originally John Vernon's restaurant, Chez Vernon, way back in the day, which was a high-end French restaurant. And then Tupper and Mark owned Chez Amis, and that's where they got their start. And then they went into the business at the Class and Grill. And they also owned a little restaurant called Amidi, which was downtown at 6 Santa Fe Plaza, which is right where Art Space was. So when I was doing Art Space, the restaurant next door was owned by these people who I later on went to work with them in the restaurant business. So we were all, and we did poetry readings at the Class and Grill back in those days. We'd do all, on some nights after it had closed, or on a night we weren't open, we would completely transform the restaurant into a performance space. I
remember Mike Mullen and Linda Patnode, now McDonald, doing Free the Fawcett Family.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, that was so wonderful.
But words can't adequately describe what it was like to see Mike Mullen perform.
Oh, gosh.
This guy was brilliant.
Yes.
He was literally brilliant, and he could go for 2 hours and just rapid fire.
Yeah.
And just have you on the edge of your chair. And he was a great writer, but his solo shows, which were kind of a combination of poetry and perhaps even stand-up, but maybe even some storytelling mixed in together. But such an opportunity, And, John McGinnis had a really good show.
Yeah.
John and I used to do this thing. We had licenses to perform on the streets in downtown Oklahoma City. And I'd play my flute and he'd play his guitar, and we had a couple of people with tambourines jumping around and stuff. This is back, you didn't really do a whole lot of, there wasn't a lot of street performance going on back this is in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
But so, there is a real rich history. There was also a theater, you might remember, was Carpenter Square ever in the Plaza District? Wasn't there a...
No.
There was a theater.
But Linda McDonald opened the Storefront Center.
Yes, the Storefront Center. And there was some great poetry readings and things that went on there, too.
Yeah.
Did you know Larry Bierman, don't you?
Yes, I
Larry Bierman
did
from
for a
Norman,
while.
but he's another guy that was a great poet from Norman. And then Point Writers Press was put together by Frank Parman.
Yeah.
And he kind of tried to do a lot of the publishing of these various little short books that people would come
In
up with.
addition to the plays that Linda produced at the Storefront Center, she would quite often have these poetry readings on Sunday afternoon, and J.R. Witt, and Linda would read Fran's, J.R.'s wife. She didn't like to be on stage, and so Linda would read Fran's poetry.
There was, it was an environment that was very accepting of poetry.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting because you really don't see a whole lot of people sitting around watching poetry. Now, there's some of that when the people had Galileo in Paseo for a while. It's now owned by a different group. But when it was Galileo's in Paseo, every Wednesday night they had like a beat poets night, and people could come in and just do off-the-cuff poetry. But back in the old days, what I'm talking about, these were actual shows where just one or maybe two performers would have the whole evening.
Yeah.
And, you'd pay to come in, or at my place, the art space was completely free, because we just did it for, and a lot of people that worked downtown would come and eat at the restaurant and then sit at our place and brown bag their lunch and listen to whatever show. And also back then, this is another really cool old piece of Oklahoma City history.
Oh, good.
The library, the downtown library, used to rent 16 millimeter movies. Okay?
Yes.
if it was a three-reeler, which would be like a feature-length film would be 3 reels of 60-millimeter film, you would have to pay 75 cents per reel to rent the films for the day. And so for a 3-reeler, you know, it cost me a couple of bucks to rent a film. And I would show movies on Fridays. Every other Friday, I would show a movie. And I would show whatever the library had. Like I remember one of them was the history of Gustav Eiffel and all, you know, how he got into bridge building and then he built the Eiffel Tower. You know, people would come, never knew what you were going to get. You know, I mean, it was really kind of a free for all and a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do that. And that's how I first got involved with Arts Council. They administered the CETA grant, but I started working with them as a volunteer in 1976 with the Festival of the Arts. And I worked as a volunteer with the Arts Festival from 1976 until I eventually got hired in 1989. So I volunteered with the festival from 76 to 89, and then I worked at the Arts Council from 1989 until 2022, December 31st of 2022. So I was there for 35 years.
And in the 13 years that you were volunteer, I assume you worked at every
event that they did.
In every position there was.
Right. Yeah, I was a stage manager. We used to do that Festifal, which was a 3-day long craft festival.
Right.
Which is super cool. And now, you know, the Arts Council once again is going to be doing a fall event. They're reinventing with the original 3 ladies that ran it, the Girly Show.
Yes.
It's an all women artist show. I think there's going to be 40 artists, and then it's 2 days of music and art, and it's going to be at
Farmers Market.
Farmers Market. That's right.
Farmers Public Market, which is just diagonally across the intersection from Carpenter Square Theater.
And what's cool about it to me is that it's bringing. To me, it's bringing back the Girly Show, number one, but it's also bringing back a fun art event in the fall, which I think we've been missing that for the last 15 or 20 years. The festival was a craft festival, but high-end craft, you know, like high-end art craft. And it was a lovely event, and it was over there at what was then called Kerr-McGee Park, and it was 3 days long, and it wasn't near the size of Festival of the Arts in the spring, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great event. And I was involved with that, every one of those, and then all the arts festivals. So it was kind of an easy fit for me when they had a position open up that I was really looking to change my career away from, once again, the restaurant business. I started at CETA program, then restaurant. Really was glad to get back into the arts.
What was your first job?
My first job there was I was sort of like a satellite program coordinator. And you just said, Toby Tobin's got a show here at the Carp. Okay, she used to be in the Lucky Penny Players.
Yes.
And the Lucky Penny Players would do our summer arts program that we would do in conjunction with the Metropolitan Library.
Exactly.
And the Lucky Penny Players would pick one book, and they would go around to all the libraries, and they would do a play about that book all summer long. And so we worked together. I'm talking way back when. You know, I've known her for, 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see, and everybody, once again, I'm plugging Carpenter Square one more time. You got to see Toby's artwork. It's pretty cool. It kind of relates to the play that you all are doing right now. Oklahoma City is a wonderful place. The first job I had with the Arts Council starting in 89 was I was the director of the Arts Commandoes. And the Arts Commandoes was kind of like a hit squad for the arts that the Arts Council put together. It was any organization that was a member of the Arts Council, and at that point there was about 80 different nonprofits that were members of the Arts Council, could petition the Arts Commandos to use us as a volunteer force. And that's how we got started working with the Philharmonic and with the ballet, and how we used to usher for all their shows. Some of these nonprofits didn't really have a strong volunteer corps. This is right back when everything was beginning. So we kind of helped them all kickstart their volunteer corps with our group of volunteers, which we had about 700 Arts Commandos.
Wow.
And some weekends we'd have 5 or 6 events going on at the same time out at the Omniplex or whatever. And it was just a variety of different events that you could volunteer for.
And you were coordinating all of these volunteers.
Yeah, the volunteers I would do 2 sign-ups a year, big sign-ups where I'd have clipboards all around the room. And I would petition all the arts organizations to give me their various projects. I'd throw a big party, ask all the Arts Commandos to come, and they would sign up on the clipboards for all these different events that would be happening all over the year. And then we would send them invitations. And back in those days, the invitations went out on the dot matrix printer, little 3x5 dot matrix cards that would go out way before computers.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And also did the 4th of July celebration. I was the director of that. And the Storytelling Festival, which Arts Council used to do a really fun, we had about 30 years of storytelling.
And that was at Stage Center.
Yeah, it was yes, it was. It actually started at Stage Center, and then it's moved to a few different places over the years based on the availability of Stage Center, because Stage Center went through a variety of different times where there was 2 or 3 years where it wouldn't be available. But the complex where Arts Council was, we ran that whole complex where the John Rex School is. Yes, the John Rex School used to be the McAlpine Building, which was the old fire station. And there were several nonprofits that had their offices there, including the Philharmonic and the Assembly of Community Arts Councils, which worked with arts councils all over the state. And a variety of different organizations had their offices in that building, and they would pay rent to us. And we managed the whole facility, which had the Stage Center building and the McAlpine building and the Arts Council building. So anyway, started out, I was storytelling in 4th of July and Arts Commandos, and I did that for about the first 10 years. And then I became the director of the Festival of the Arts, and I did that for about 10 years. And then I became the executive director of the Arts Council. And it shifted over into fundraising, as you well know, that side of the fence.
Yeah.
And worked that job for the remainder of my career, which was I worked at the Arts Council for 35 years. And I've loved every minute of it. It was a lot of fun. And now since I retired in 22. So the last 3 years, I started my own little business, and I do a lot of consulting. I work with some nonprofits, more foundation related. And then I work with a variety of different people who are raising money from different organizations. And I'm kind of mentoring people who, because I'm not doing their fundraising for them, but I'm watching how their systems work, and I'm helping them kind of refine them a little bit. So,
now, when you say foundations, you're putting nonprofit organizations together with foundations?
No. My job, I get to work with whomever I want, and I've been hired by a couple of different. I work with some with OMRF, and I also work with the McLaughlin Foundation, and I'm just whatever projects they may have that I can help them with, in more of an advisory mentorship type of a deal. And I'm doing quite a few things with sports related things these days.
Really?
Like I was just out this morning at North OKC. The soccer complex that's being built out there.
Yeah.
I'm helping them with some fundraising to raise the funding for the gap between what the MAPS 4 money came up with and some bond money, and then what's left over has to be raised through the community. But the idea is to create, 25 soccer fields on the north side of Lake Hefner.
Right.
It's just amazing how soccer is just blooming in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And actually sport, and a lot of it has to do with sports as it relates to kids in sports too.
Right.
And it's a lot of the same thing with the arts. I mean, arts keeps kids in school because it's super fun and kids love it. Sports keeps kids in school. And if you get them involved with a club, or if you can get them on a team, some sort of an arts club or some sort of a sports team, the statistics have proven time and time again that those kids stay in school. They graduate and they go on.
And they thrive.
Yes, they absolutely thrive. That whole concept of being part of a club or a team is just such an important part of their growth and development as they go through school.
And not to get too political, but it's distressing that our legislature removed the mandatory arts requirement for graduation in high school.
Well, that was
fine arts requirement.
That was several different legislatures, and not necessarily the one we currently have. That's been going on for a long time. There have been several difficult, let's say, vacuous periods of time in relation to arts in public school. I remember it was about 6 years ago that we put together at the Arts Council, where we were actually trying to help fund some arts-related positions in schools because they had been removed. But the current administration isn't totally to blame. I mean, there's a whole lot of arts has had sadly, has had a hard time making the argument that arts was an essential service. However, it is an essential service, and it completely transforms the youth when they have an opportunity to interact with art. It's so good for self-esteem. It's just so good for so many different things. The concept of arts in schools has had some difficulties, but I think that it's something that's been going on since the beginning of time. I mean, arts has constantly had to prove that it's an essential service, but it is an essential service.
Yeah.
I'll have to say, since I retired from the arts, working in some of these sports-related things, people seem to get that a little bit more.
Oh, good.
And then it's easy for me when I'm talking to them about that to get them to see, think about, okay, so there's 2 of those kids that are in this family that are really excel at soccer or they really excel at football. But what about the other 2 kids? And then I start thinking, well, maybe their avenue could be the arts. And the whole idea is, once again, to get them involved. And if you can get them involved, then they thrive. Mm-hmm. And so that's been an easy sell once you take it that direction. But anyway, so that's a little bit about me.
Okay.
I don't really know where else to go with it other than I keep playing, I keep enjoying music, and I keep being involved with the things that excite me.
And that's what I was going to ask you about music. You've continued to play. We mentioned earlier playing with the Phil back at 4th of July. Do you still sit in with bands from time to time?
Oh, absolutely. But more than bands, it's actually I've gotten involved with some of these community programs at like the Methodist Church that I'm a member of.
Okay.
And I performed on Sunday morning and just this last week. But the caliber of musicians that are in some of these church groups are awesome. They're all lyric trained singers, and some of the best performers are actually people that you see in the
right.
Phil, or I play with a lot of Phil performers in church groups on Sunday.
Okay.
I play about twice a month in church groups. I don't play as much in the clubs anymore. For once again, there's not a lot of places to do it. And I'm not currently a member of a band, and that's okay with me. I sit in like I'm a shotgun harp player. I can sit in with just about, and I do some recording work, whenever it comes up. I've even done a few movie scores.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Like what?
Oh, there was that Chickasaw Rancher deal. I did that a couple of years ago out at Castle Row Studios. Mm-hmm. And I've recently played on a couple people's. I played on one of JB's records a couple of years back. And so it just wherever the road of music takes you,
Yeah. What's next?
Wow. Let's see. Well, later this week, I'm working on, part of my business is photography. I do quite a bit of photography.
That's right.
This fall, I am gonna be shooting some things for Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation. They have some big parties coming up. They've got 3 Dog Night coming in for a big fundraiser, and I'll be shooting that fundraiser. And I'm doing a lot of photography restoration. It's kind of a niche market that a lot of people have old photographs that are framed. And they've just they're everywhere. They might have 150 of them. And what I do is I convince them to let me scan those photographs and restore them, mm-hmm. and then put the files on JPEG files. And I'm talk people into buying those Aura frames where the photos just flip through a frame, mm-hmm. Like an 8x10 frame. But it's just to cut down on the clutter. And also, a lot of people in my age group are thinking about, how do you give these images to people like your kids or your grandkids, because photographs are not the way to do it anymore. It's all on your phone. So
right.
when you scan images, put them into JPEG files, and you can run them up to the cloud, and then you can share them on social media, and you can share them on your phone, and you can have images on your phone that you never would be able to before, because they've been in some silver frame on grandma's grand piano. And you wouldn't believe there's quite a market for this.
I'll bet there is.
I mean, it really is. I shouldn't even be talking about it because I don't want anybody else to utilize my idea. But I think that there's
there's skill and art involved in what you're doing.
It's really amazing what you can come up with when you actually take an old photograph and restore it. And it's the good news there is that once they're restored, I take them out of the frame and I put them into archival plastic sheeting and stick them into a 3-ring binder so that there's no more damage from sunlight. So you keep the original photographs because nobody has the negatives. Nobody does.
Right.
But they do. They just have the photographs, and so this way the photographs can be preserved. And you can preserve 300 or 400 photographs in one 3-ring binder, and instead of having them all over the place. And then you can give the frames, the beautiful silver frames they're on, you give them as heirloom gifts to your children and your grandkids. Plus, they get a thumb drive with all the pictures on it, too.
Yeah, such a deal. Such a deal. We have a partnership here at Carpenter with a local group called Frames with Photos.
Yeah.
And it's a fundraiser for us. You upload your photo to them and you pick out the frame you want in the size, and then they mail it to whoever. So you can give a framed photo to someone, and then we get 10% of the deal.
Well, that's a cool deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I know the one thing that you and I absolutely don't have any trouble is staying involved. I mean, for me, it's just like whatever it is that I feel like doing, I get a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And I always did that when I was working full time anyway. It's just now I have a little bit more time to do it. But you never know. I mean, people just call you up and ask you to do things. If you say yes a lot, you get asked to do stuff.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that was really interesting that we did at the Arts Council was the Festival of the Arts. And I think there's some things about that event that people may not realize, but there were periods of time in downtown Oklahoma City, like when Penn Square Bank failed, for instance.
Right.
When Oklahoma City downtown was not a very active place.
Oh, no.
There wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah, they used to roll up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock.
It's really true. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, not just necessarily for myself, but for that organization, was Arts Council Oklahoma City continued to do the Festival of the Arts in the spring, and for about 15 years did the Festival in the fall. But the Spring Arts Festival was a time where people would come downtown and spend time downtown celebrating downtown.
Yeah.
And
it became and still is the preeminent annual event.
Absolutely.
I mean, every reader poll, any publication looking for best of whatever, Arts Festival is.
Well, when you have 100,000 people coming through it on a daily basis while it's there, yes, it becomes really something. But it was getting huge crowds like that when nothing was going on in downtown Oklahoma City. So I kind of look at it, those years, we were sort of the bridge event that kind of brought people back to downtown.
Yeah.
And that was really pretty special. And then when we decided, we were in the Myriad Gardens for a long time, you know.
Yeah.
And then we decided we were going to have to move it. And we had to move it because of the modern streetcar. The modern streetcar came down Hudson where all the artist tents were located when it was over at the Myriad Gardens. So we were going to have to move the artists area.
That's right.
We're talking about 144 artists in tents, and it just couldn't be done very well if we were to stay in that area. We tried. We had a group called ADG, an architectural group, that tried to come up with different ways to morph the artist tents into other places. Like we thought, well, would we move them over to Robinson Street? But then the Thunder was doing so well that when the playoffs would happen, they would close that whole area in front of the basketball gym. So we couldn't put it over there. So anyway, we ended up moving it back to Bicentennial Park. But when we decided to do that, the move was made in 2016. And when we decided to do that, we were looking at this back in 2014, 2015, they only had in that park about 60 amps of power.
All they needed.
They just didn't have a need for it. So we hired an electrical engineering firm to kind of come in and take a look at the arts festival. And we were posed with, okay, we're going to move it. What's it going to take to move it?
Right.
So we found out that we would have to bring instead of 60 amps, we were going to have to bring in 14,000 amps.
Oh my goodness.
Of power into the Civic Center Bicentennial Park area. And to do that, a lot of it had to be done underground. So we did over $500,000 worth of underground electric and then more money spent above ground. But to move the Arts Festival over, it cost $1.8 million to move the Arts Festival to to Bicentennial Park. But it was it was a great idea in that now that park is poised to be used for any kind of an event.
Right.
And it's a beautiful park. It's sandwiched between those fantastic Art Deco buildings of the Civic Center on one side and City Hall on the other.
Right.
And the tents beautifully just surround the park on the streets on Colcord and Couch. So, but moving that over there was really a process, and it was well worth it. And now that's where that's the new home of the event.
Yeah.
People wonder, well, will it ever move to Scissortail Park? But in reality, Scissortail Park has so many wonderful activities that are going on there.
Right.
And Bicentennial Park has the Arts Festival. So it seems to work really well. And it's kind of nice to have it just in the middle of all those businesses. People don't have a lot of time for lunch, so they can just walk right out of their building and go down and eat there and then come back to work. I've really enjoyed that part of Festival of the Arts that through thick and thin since it began. And Arts Council of Oklahoma City is about to have its 60th anniversary Festival of the Arts. This spring will be the 60th anniversary of the festival. And
just to date this, we're recording this podcast on September 23rd of 2025.
Right.
So 2026 will be the 60th anniversary.
Yes, it will be in the spring.
Hey, I don't want to end on a down note, so we'll have to find something else to talk about after this. But I want to ask you about the dark days of 1995, the festival of 95.
Well,
because the tents were all up.
Well, I was working at I was young in my life as an Arts Council staffer because I started in '89. So in '95. April 19th, 1995, was the week before the Arts Festival. The Arts Festival was going to begin on the Tuesday of the very next week.
Right.
So we usually spend about 2 weeks setting up the Arts Festival. So, April 19th, we were full on. I mean, we had probably over 100 tents already up, and it was at
Bicentennial Park.
It was at Bicentennial Park. No, it wasn't at Bicentennial. It was at the Myriad Gardens.
That's right. It was
in 1995.
Yeah.
And so we were really close to the area when the bomb went off that morning. Of course, it was a horrible catastrophe. And there were so many things that were affected. I mean, our city was in shock.
Of course.
Essentially in shock. And we didn't know what to do. The city was in a quandary as to whether we should have the festival or not.
Right.
And back in those days, we had telephones that you were push button telephones, and if you had 4 lines out, there was a button for each line out. And from the minute we'd get to the office in the morning until we left, all 4 of those lines were ringing the entire time from later in the afternoon on the 19th through the weekend all the way up until we made the decision to not have the Arts Festival, which was on that Monday of the next week, the day before. All the artists had flown or driven to town. Everybody was here. But you couldn't get a line out to make a call. And and everybody, when you'd answer the phone, it might be someone saying, "You can't have that festival. My daughter, I still haven't found my daughter. There's no way you can have the Arts Festival."
Yeah.
And then the next call you would be, "I'm a fireman. I've come here from Georgia and I'm working. You've got to do the Arts Festival. You can't let them control us. You can't." And this is before they knew who had actually done the deed.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of people thinking it was a terrorist attack. Of some Middle East this or whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, it was a caustically weird environment where everybody was pretty peeved, but also in shock.
Right. And passions and emotions really high.
Yeah. It was so interesting, though, when the decision was made to close it on that Monday, and then it got out to the media that the Arts Festival was not going to happen. All of a sudden, the phone was not ringing anymore, and it was the weirdest. It was like this quiet because you didn't hear this constant ringing of the phone. I mean, it never stopped. You couldn't. The only way you could get a dial, you couldn't get an outgoing line unless you went to the fax machine to use that line. I mean, that's how intense it was.
Yeah.
But City Hall, they did such a fantastic job trying to figure it all out. I mean, and there was a lot of people. Gary Mars, who later became, he was the chief of the fire department at that time. He later became president of the board for Arts Council Oklahoma City. He was instrumental in helping us work through.
A city councilman.
Oh, absolutely.
And assistant city manager, and still on the MAPS committee.
Yeah, he was one of those folks that really helped us, and there was a lot of volunteers that really helped. But yeah, it was a difficult time for sure, but it was definitely the right decision to make to not have the event. I mean, essentially the 1995 bombing was like there were 75 buildings that were razed because that literally had to be torn down.
Right.
I mean, it changed the landscape of downtown Oklahoma City.
Sure.
Now, the very next year, in 1996, when the festival happened again, was the first time that art sales went over $1 million.
How about that?
And it was just like the people were they wanted to come back, and they wanted to let the Arts Council and the Arts Festival know, we still love you. We're really sorry you weren't there last year. I think people bought twice as much that year just to try to let you know. I mean, and it was a pretty wonderful thing. And that the Arts Council's event, the Festival of the Arts, the fact that it was so closely associated with the bombing is one of the reasons why when they do the marathon, it's always on the last Sunday of the Arts Festival. It's always the same week as the Arts Festival, and it's on that Sunday of the Arts Festival, which is also great for the marathon because, all these people come to town for the marathon, and they're usually there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's the festival's going on at the same time, so there's just all this activity in downtown Oklahoma City. But that was all planned on purpose. So every year you can be rest assured those two events will be tied together.
Very nice. Okay, so last question. You're so closely associated with having spent 35 years with the Art Council of Oklahoma City, the highest point of your career?
I just think that interacting with volunteers is without a doubt the highest point. I mean, just the fact that we get to celebrate community. Arts Council of Oklahoma City does an incredibly good job of celebrating Oklahoma City. And it's just when you see all those people, you come, you build, you do all the sweat equity to put these events together, but people actually show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing like that when you get to see the people interact with the events that you put together and you put on. And just actually getting a chance to be a part of something that affected that many people is without a doubt the high point for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've put in my fair share of time.
That's true. And you need to be volunteering this coming spring.
Well, we're now partnered with Strawberries Newport.
Ah, there you go. So you'll be down there.
I worked, I don't know how many shifts this past year.
Well, and good for you. I'm glad to hear it.
Only ate one helping. Anyway, Peter Dolese, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for
That's been my
spending
pleasure.
time with me on This Town OKC. Sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater, because we get to record in the rehearsal studio. Edited by Fred O. Bishop. This has been a Lippert Media production. I'm Rick Allen Lippert.